The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Welcome to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am your host, Benjamin Dixon. Today is Tuesday, December 10th, 2019. Thank you so much for joining us. I don't want to sound dramatic, but it is going to be rather dramatic. We are in trouble in this country. Quite frankly, society, humanity, we are in trouble. But it's best illuminated through what's happening in American politics. And one story, I think, becomes the best demonstration of why we are in trouble. We are in trouble because we are in a post-fact America, but it's not just a post-factual America in the sense of disinformation being disseminated from the top down. We're in a post-fact America that is weaponized at every level of participation, from the White House to the media, to the consumers of the media, to the viewers, to the listeners. And this is what I mean. The story that I'm talking about I'm referring to is the Horowitz report. The Horowitz report is the Inspector General's report who looked into the Russian probe. The Russian probe, of course, was the Mueller report looking into Donald Trump and obstruction of justice. Well, the Inspector General's report on Russia found some key takeaways, and these are the takeaways: that the FBI did not use the Steele dossier to open the Russian probe, that no evidence of political bias was a factor, that Carter Page was the only Trump official under FISA surveillance. The report also found that the FBI was rather feckless, that the FBI was pretty much incompetent because one of the original warrants for Carter Page surveillance, the FISA warrants for Carter Page, was filled with inaccuracies. Well, let me give the exact number: 7 significant inaccuracies and omissions. Now, the totality of the report, the key takeaway, 2 things: that they found no political bias, and 2, the only Trump official that was under surveillance was Carter Page. Now, I generally find no utility in trying to point out item by item where they are lying and where there was a leap of logic and where they're just downright weaponizing lies. That's because it is intentional. It's not that someone made a mistake and oops, my bad, I misinterpreted that. No, the misinterpretation is on purpose. But I will point out the one. Here's what Fox News is doing. The Wall Street Journal has an opinion piece about this morning from the editorial board, no less. I mean, it's not an opinion piece by just some apparatchik. It's an opinion piece by the damn editorial board. And they are doing the same thing that Fox News did all day yesterday. They're doing the same thing that the president of the United States is counting on. And this is what they're doing. They are saying that because Carter Page was underneath the surveillance, a FISA warrant, and Carter Page was on the Trump campaign, therefore, the Obama administration was surveilling the Trump campaign. Once you can say that, then you go one step further and say, oh my God, everything Donald Trump said was right. Obama was surveilling President Trump. You think I'm lying? You think I'm exaggerating? That is exactly what they've done. Now, mind you, this is not a mistake. This is not a misinterpretation. It's not that I read that wrong and then I spoke. No, they are intentionally making those leaps of logic because they need to weaponize something to fight back against the impeachment hearings that are happening right now. Now, in a broader context, this one story is quite an example of what's wrong. I think not just what's wrong, but what is the biggest hurdle for us to overcome at this juncture in our country's history, as well as in humanity. I want to play a clip showing you how far that leap of logic went, and I might share that with you, but I have to make this point. When the people demand the lies, and you have a leader who is more than capable of giving them every lie they ever would need to sustain their worldview that otherwise is unsustainable. when you have that, you have gone far beyond the darkest nightmare of the only book everybody seems to have read, 1984. We don't read any other book besides that. Because in 1984, it was suggested that the people were going to be abused and forced to receive the lies, brainwashed and forced to take the lies that otherwise they would not receive. But that's not how it's playing out in American history and subsequently world history. It's playing out that the people, in order to sustain their worldview, in order to win online arguments, in order to never have to confront the physical pain that is associated with realizing that you have been wrong, the people are demanding the lies. And if you are a politician not willing to give them the lie, then they will find someone else. And we have come to a junction in American history where we have the perfect confluence of two different forces. You have the people, the conservative movement, Republicans, all demanding that they are fed the lies necessary for them to sustain their worldview that is otherwise unsustainable, for them to win their petty little arguments on social media, and for them to never have to confront the physical pain that is associated with changing their mind or realizing that they have been wrong. They are now demanding something from a person who is more than capable of giving them every single lie because he is completely and 100% shameless. Donald Trump will sit there with cookies all over his hands and say that he was not in the cookie jar. And he will dare you to say otherwise. And what we're dealing with now is a group of people who see the president, know his hands were in the cookie jar, know that he's got damn crumbs around his dirty little crusty orange face, and they know that he's lying, and they say, "Thank you, Mr. President. You were right. You were right. Thank you. Praise God for you, Mr. President." All because they do not want to confront the physical pain that is associated with admitting that you have been wrong, and because without the lie, their worldview is completely and utterly unsustainable. And so therefore, we are far worse than what 1984, the only book anybody has ever read, ever imagined. We're in a place where the people demand the lies. And if the politicians don't provide the lies necessary to sustain an unsustainable worldview, well, then they'll find themselves a Donald Trump.
Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.
Well, all right. I am unable to announce any new patrons today. Like, what? It's all good. We can still bob our head for a few seconds. Special shout out to everyone who supports the show, everyone who has subscribed, everyone who is a patron. Without you, the show is not possible. But I feel a little awkward having a patron party with no new patrons. So go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show. And you, that person who has been considering for a long time, you're like, well, I can only afford $1 a month or $3 a month, I mean, and honestly, think of it this way, like $3 is a cup of coffee. That's like an elite cup of coffee. That's like one of those box store cups of coffee. Just imagine, like, if I was in town, would you take me to get a coffee? Like, I would hope so. Hell, I would treat you to a coffee just because you listen to the show. So think of it that way. You just buy me a coffee once a month. And if you're really down with the show, then $10 a month, buy me my favorite bourbon. Well, honestly, it's cognac. But anyway, go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and become a member of this prestigious and prodigious family. Okay, let me cut to the chase on this next segment. In the first segment, I outlined the problem of an electorate, a conservative electorate that needs the lie, and a president who will more than happily give them the lie. But we're dealing also with the problem, a significant problem in the Democratic Party. Let me start with the lead. The Democrats today in the House, Nancy Pelosi, is getting ready to have a press conference to announce the articles of impeachment of Donald Trump And then right after, they're going to have an announcement where they're going to announce a trade deal that they came to terms with Donald Trump. I mean, I'm sorry. That has to be the most asinine, ass backwards, incompetent political strategy imaginable, because two things happen. I mean, it's almost staggering. They're really guaranteeing that Donald Trump is going to be reelected. They're guaranteeing Donald Trump is going to be reelected, save one candidate on the other in the Democratic primary. They're guaranteeing because, one, of course, he's going to be found not guilty in the Senate. The Republicans have already said that we already know that. So he's going to get a political victory there that otherwise could be spun in a way that really is telling the truth, that there is nothing that Donald Trump could do that Republicans would ever hold him accountable for. That's the truth. I said spun, but that's not really political spin. That's the goddamn truth. But now you add on top of that the fact that Nancy Pelosi, who's leading these impeachment proceedings, or this inquiry in general, is giving the president of the United States a political victory. A huge political victory. So it's not just, it sends a signal to the American people. A couple things. Republicans look at this and are like, you big dummy. You are so moronic, Nancy Pelosi. That's what Republicans are thinking. I don't care if Nancy Pelosi thinks she's governing well. See, what they don't realize we're at political war. That's what it is. What they want more than anything else, people like Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, what they want more than anything else is for things to just go back nice and quiet and normal, where people weren't really paying attention. Because at that point, they could just all get together and go have a political bipartisan happy hour after work. But during that time frame over the last 40 years, while Democrats just they're excited to be in D.C. and, we could have a happy hour. We can all just, we could disagree on the floor. But when we get out of there, we can all go and have a nice scotch. And while Democrats were doing that meticulously over the last 40 years, policy by policy, vote by vote, district by district, issue by issue, tax cut by tax cut, Republicans changed the face of this country while Democrats were sleeping, or while Democrats were sleeping at the bar. And that's what Nancy Pelosi is doing here. And there's even a clip. I'll play this clip. I wasn't going to play a whole bunch of clips today, but I have to play this clip. Here is Nancy Pelosi saying that she came in fully aware. She came in as Speaker of the House, fully aware that George W. Bush had lied to the American people, getting us into the Iraqi war. And yet she chose not to impeach him.
Because when I became Speaker the first time, there was overwhelming call for me to impeach President Bush on the strength of the war in Iraq, which I vehemently opposed. That was my wheelhouse. I was intelligence. I was the ranking member on the Intelligence Committee, even before I became part of the leadership of Gang of Four. So I knew there were no nuclear weapons in Iraq. It just wasn't there. They had to show us. They had to show the Gang of Four all the intelligence they had. The intelligence did not show that that was the case. So I knew it was a misrepresentation to the public. But having said that, it was in my view, not a ground for impeachment. They won the election. They made a representation, and to this day, people think that that it was the right thing to do. But they had impeached Bill Clinton for personal indiscretion and misrepresenting about it. Impeached him. Some of these same people are saying, "Oh, this doesn't rise to impeachment," and so they did. Bill Clinton. Now they want me to do George. I just didn't want it to be a way of life in our country.
I'm sorry, but what? So she's saying, I don't know. Okay, listen, I don't know what behind the scenes she might honestly believe, but let's just take the stupidity of what she's saying and break this down. So she's telling us that because Republicans had recklessly impeached Bill Clinton over his personal indiscretions that he lied about under oath, that she felt like the right thing to do was for her to intentionally not impeach George W. Bush, who lied to America and got us into a war that cost trillions of dollars, cost thousands of American lives, and cost us about 1 million lives in Iraq. Iraqi citizens, not just Iraqi soldiers, but Iraqi citizens, and has put us in a quagmire that has lasted damn near 15 years. No, actually, absolutely 16 years, going on 17 years. Based on intentional lying to the people. And because she did not want to make this a way of life in America, see, this is what it is. We've got cowards up against people who would burn it all down. Democrats who are like, oh, we don't want to shake up the system too much, guys. Can we just get back to some sense of normalcy? Can we just get back to the point where we can all get together and go have that bipartisan happy hour? While Republicans are like, we will burn this bitch to the ground in order to get our agenda across. So I don't care. I don't care what they're, I have no need to believe that they're all just, putting on a big dog and pony show, a kabuki theater for us to just keep us all entertained and keep us all angry, and that Nancy Pelosi actually is in league with Donald Trump or George W. Bush. I don't need that. When the logic that she just displayed there is so sickening that she needs to be the next one to go. And I've obviously have supported her. I've obviously pushed, I honestly was like, hey, if anybody can get it done, it's Nancy Pelosi. But this clip right here, you mean to tell me that you intentionally ignored your responsibility to impeach George W. Bush, who is by far worse than Donald Trump? And now we see that she really didn't want to impeach Donald Trump. And if it wasn't for this open and shut case about Ukraine, she wouldn't have impeached them. If it wasn't for it being so patently obvious that he sought quid pro quo, that if she didn't impeach Donald Trump, she would have been impeached by her own members of her own party. If it wasn't for that, she would not be impeaching Donald Trump. When they're up against a party that will impeach the next listen, if this is really the logic underneath it, what they're saying is the Republicans are so dangerous that if we behave the way they behave, then we would destroy this country. And I just got bad news for you. If that's what you're thinking, then it is already too late for this country. Because without a firm opposition to counterbalance what the Republicans have been doing for the last 40 years, then they will take us to a right-wing dystopia over the next 40 years where we would have to burn this bitch down just to survive, just for our own personal freedoms and liberties. We've already lost. We have already lost when our leadership, their starting position is one of not wanting to fight. When the opposition, when the Republicans from the other side are saying, I don't care what you do. I don't care how much you work with us. I don't care how much you capitulate. I don't care how much you give us tax breaks. We're going to fight you like you were the devil himself.
I saw John, it was not a good circumstance. We had a brief conversation. And I'm so happy that working with your senators in our office, we were able to rectify your situation. Let me just say this, not just to John. As a nation, we can disagree about a war. We can disagree about foreign policy. But when brave people like John put their lives on the line to defend our country, when they come home, they will receive the best quality health care that this country can provide them.
That was Bernie Sanders yesterday from Carson City, Nevada. Bernie Sanders yesterday was speaking about a veteran by the name of John who wanted to give him his flight jacket because Senator Sanders, along with his senators from Nevada, assisted him to get rid of $139,000 in medical debt that, quite frankly, he should not have had, because as a veteran, he should have been able to get the care he needed for free through the VA. Because of his situation, and I didn't play the portion of John, but John was saying that it pushed him to the point of suicide. And so he wanted to give Bernie Sanders his flight jacket. That's when Bernie Sanders announced on Twitter yesterday that, and he's already announced it, but he reminded us that he is going to cancel all medical debt. He's going to cancel all medical debt because, as we know, one of the leading causes of bankruptcy in this country is medical debt. Now, two things that I want to say about this, and we won't talk about it long. One, it just blows me away that we have an entire industry whose profit margins are based on people dying of cancer. Children with leukemia, people on dialysis, people with diabetes, the sick and the dying. We have an entire industry who have CEOs sitting in the lap of luxury, directing their finance team to crunch out those numbers so that they could hit that target profit margin for the quarter. And the only way they can hit that margin for the quarter is if they raise premiums, raise deductibles, and raise copays, or straight out deny the sick and the dying. That blows my mind, that this is the default position in this country that we don't even have to justify. It simply is. Nobody is going around. Why is it that we're not justifying why it's okay for CEOs of health industries, of insurance companies, to make profits off of the sick and the dying? Instead, we have to go around justifying why we need Medicare for all. This is a dystopia. I actually kind of gave up a little bit. I was trying to write political fiction and trying to describe a dystopia. And I realized that I can't describe something more dystopic than what we currently have. Not because things can't get worse, but because we're so comfortable with how bad things are. Like, it is utterly unimaginable that we are 100% comfortable with millionaire CEOs turning down cancer patients for treatment because they have to hit profit margins for the quarter. See, it's easy for us to imagine how bad things would be if there was some type of authoritarian power over us that ruthlessly brutalized us and we couldn't say anything. I couldn't do a podcast because the Gestapo would be outside of my door. That's easy to imagine. But what's difficult to imagine is something that is worse than people who think that they are free, literally being held hostage by people who would just as soon see you die than to give you what you need. Because if they gave you what you needed, they might miss their profit margins by 0.01%, and that's not acceptable. I'm having a hard time thinking of ways that we can honestly be in a more dystopic society than a society that believes that it's free, celebrates its freedom, but all the while we have embraced the absolute worst ideas imaginable. And we accept it as simply normal. So last night I'm listening to some gospel music and I'm just trying to go to sleep. And what came across my playlist was a Hillsong. Hillsong is like a really super popular white evangelical style of music. And it was a dope song. I liked it. It was very nice, very good. And then it just hit me. I'm like, is there not a single, and actually let me give you a little more context. Like, it was such a meaningful song. It was a piercing song. It was the carefully crafted. I'm like, wow, this is a great song. And I just paused in amazement to think that there is an entire group of people whose entire purpose for being, at least what they tell us, is the concern for other people and love for other people. Love that's informed by their faith and in Jesus Christ, all that good stuff. So you have this entire group of people who are always, every other day, running around moralizing, telling us that we need to be better, that we need to do better, that we need to love our neighbor, and we need to do all this. And they have all this beautiful music that they write. I generally don't listen to it, but this one was nice. And you mean to tell me, out of all of these white conservative evangelicals, there is not a single organized resistance to Donald Trump coming from the church? Now, don't get me wrong. You've listened to the show, so you know I know better. You know I know the answer to it. You know, quite frankly, I had no expectation that there ever would be some type of organized resistance from Christians in response to Donald Trump. I will say that I am a little bit amazed that they not only are they not resisting, but they are fully embracing him as a Messiah figure. I will have to admit that was a surprise. I didn't expect resistance, but I didn't expect the veneration. But even though I didn't expect any resistance, it blows me away that I was right. You mean to tell me that there's not one single organized group of conservative, and when I say conservative evangelicals, I mean people who otherwise completely disagree with me. I'm not talking about progressive Christians. Like me and progressive Christians, we see eye to eye on like 90% of our theology as well as 90% of our politics, and that's why we're active and we fight for marginalized people. Like, we get it. I'm talking about people who otherwise disagree with me 90% of the time. You mean in that entire group of millions of people, you cannot find a single organized group resisting Donald Trump and his particular style of barbarism? I'm really just sharing with you a repeated point of exasperation where I know something to be true, but damn, really? You know, I know conservative evangelical Christianity is particularly void of actual compassion, and they have political compassion. I get that. I know that. I wrote the book on it. But damn, I mean, you mean to tell me that I was right, like 95% to 100% right about them? I would honestly expect that even for the appearance of being actually concerned about being like Christ and Christ-like, that somebody, some group, not just individuals, of course they're going to be individuals, but I'm saying, where is the organized resistance from the church? Because, you know, black folks, we ain't messing with Donald Trump. We're not allowing our religion to be, I mean, there's a handful of us, but it's an organized body. We're like, no, we see the inherent evils of this administration. Again, I don't think that this, honestly, I'm going to be quite frank with you. Like, usually I have like a really poignant point in each segment, but here I'm just sharing a personal point of exasperation because I'm like, it just would be, you would think the people who can sit and tap into such a sense of emotionality, a sense of compassion, and present to the world all of their love and all of their concern for hurting people and all their concern for helping people that are hurting, all of that that they portray and that is captured in their music. And there's not a single damn organized resistance coming from the white church, the evangelical conservative white church, to who is without question, demonstrably everything that Christ would not be like. I don't always like to be right. Sometimes I'm okay with being wrong.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.